you get to a water harvesting feature during the rainy season, there will likely be quite a number of annual reeds that need to be removed. Our rainy seasons are usually winter, spring, and the monsoons. So that's when you're going to see the most annual weeds popping up. Right now we're in the winter spring season, so as you can see, there's plenty to pull here. We want to remove these by hand because there may be very beneficial plants coming up in this same area, and we don't want to cut them all down. We just want to remove the invasives. So London rocket, this wild mustard, that's one of our most common winter weeds. We have this annual foxtail barley grass. I'm going to get all of those out. The nice thing about annuals is they pull out very easily. They don't have robust root structures, so you can take them right out by hand. And in general, you're going to have to throw these away because they've gone to seed. But if we had gotten to it a little sooner and it was just the leafy greens, we could leave it right in the basin as organic mulch. So there are some really common winter weeds. You've seen them, but you'll have to work to get more familiar with them so you don't confuse them for other things. The London rocket or wild mustard, that one's a big one. The cheeseweed or invasive mallow, that's another really common winter weed. But there are others, so if you don't know, don't pull it. There's plenty of native annuals coming up this time of year, wildflowers and other beneficial plants. But if you do know, go ahead and take it out. This is one I really want to show you because it looks kind of cute. It's not cute. This is called fillery. The leaves look kind of like fern leaves. Some people call it stork spill because the seeds look very much like the beak of a stork. And this is a very invasive flower that will take over a landscape if it's not removed. This one has seeds, so we're going to throw it away. This here is what I call lazy landscaping. This is a volunteer tree. It popped up in the water harvesting feature because there was water, but it's not in the right place. It's blocking the inlet right here where the water comes in, and it's not native. This is a non-native mesquite. So instead of pulling it out when it was a little seedling, a landscaper cut it to the ground. That is not the way to remove a tree because, as you can see, it sprouts right back out again, and now we have probably 5 to 10 years of growth and chopping, and this is a very unsightly tree. It also is a constant maintenance need. So when you see young tree seedlings popping up in the basins, which they will, you need to remove them by the root. All right, so here you can see we have a volunteer tree from this year. This is a Mexican Palo Verde. It is a weed species, and it's also right next to a stop sign. So this is not a good place for a tree, and this is the time that it should be removed. Not cut, removed. Remember what I said, we're gonna remove the whole root. And if it breaks, you don't leave it like that. You want this whole taproot to come out. Now this isn't coming back. All right, so here we're looking at a chicane, a water harvesting feature that has been entirely infested with Bermuda grass. This is one of the most common issues we see with green stormwater infrastructure, and there's not a lot of good options for dealing with Bermuda grass. You can't pull it out because it grows back from the roots. And so if you're in an area where you can dig it out, that's the best approach. In this area, we have rocks covering the whole spillway, so we can't dig here, and we're just going to try to keep it low enough that it doesn't get in the way of the water flow or choke out other plants. So that's when you want to use your weed whacker, just cut it back, and that's going to be a regular maintenance task for this area. So when you come into a basin like this with your weed whacker to deal with the Bermuda, you still have to be careful about the native plants that are here. This is a desert willow. This is a beautiful desert tree, but not anymore. Somebody cut it down. It's your responsibility to know which plants are native and desirable and which aren't, and this should never have been cut down. So be aware of that when you're using your weed whacker. The other thing that's super important is to not weed whack anywhere close to the trunk of a tree. Trees have really thin growing layers around the outside under the bark, and if you cut through those, you can kill the whole tree with a weed whacker. So you don't want to get anywhere close to it. If there's grass up to the tree, you'll just hand pull that area. And lastly, there are still beneficial plants in this basin. It's mostly Bermuda, but over here we have some really nice globe mallow. This is one of our nicest wildflowers. We don't want to weed whack this down, so again, work around it, hand pull if you have to, and then weed whack the rest. In this basin, we see a lot of Bermuda again, but that's not the only thing growing. If you look here, you'll see this beautiful little penstemon shoot. This is another one of our great wildflowers. But this isn't the only one. There are hundreds of baby penstemons down in this basin. Just because it's green doesn't mean it's a weed. These are plants we want to keep. All right, here's another one of our most common invasive weeds. This is bufflegrass. I'm sure you've all heard of it, but it's going to be really important that you know the difference between this grass and other grasses. This grass is a perennial weed, which means if you don't pull it out, it's going to come back year after year. It looks like someone cut this down already. Maybe they didn't know what it was, but its roots are still there, and it's already put out new seed heads because it wasn't removed thoroughly. So there's a couple ways that you can ID bufflegrass. If it has seed heads, they tend to have this purplish color. They're a little bit curly. The hairs on the seed head are. Something you can use to help ID it if you don't have any seed heads to look at is that they have hairy ligules, which are just the joints between the different sections of grass. And not all grasses have that. So this grass needs to be removed by the roots. It won't come back after that. It's not like Bermuda, but you do need to get the whole thing out. All right, if you get all those roots out, then you're done. Put this in the trash.